Okay, so for my special research topic on Russian culture, I will be covering the Russian wedding traditions. So these are a few of the pictures that show a little bit of the fun and festival and color with Russian weddings. And so some of the history surrounding Russian cultures and their traditions include customs prior to the 1900s. There was a shift of traditions in the 1900s, and this is due to the introduction of what is called the Red Wedding, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner. The Red Wedding is considered to be a secular event without religious meaning, where only the bride and groom are present for these weddings, which are more of a governmental contract and involve minimal decor, fanfare, and no guest. This means that Russian weddings resemble Western traditions a bit more now than they did prior to the 1900s. One direct example of what this looks like is that the brides in Russia traditionally wore red up until the 1960s. Now, almost all of them choose to wear white, as located in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, there are a few exceptions. So since there are no perfectly established laws or rules that dictate Russian weddings today, this allows people to take on a modern approach of their Russian weddings, and so it still allows them to have certain traditions in place. It is interesting that Russian weddings have been incorporating more European and other Western details lately, such as floral altar arches, first dances, and bouquet tosses. Some wedding traditions include betrothal ceremonies, crowning the bride and groom, breaking glass, bride napping and ransom, cleaning the monkey from the floor, kitchen towel, bread and salt, caraway bread, wedding games, household chores, road trips, and traditional wedding clothes. So this is just a few of the lists that we had there. And so this is an image of the betrothal ceremony. So this is the first step usually in a Russian wedding. So essentially this ceremony takes place in a church and gets led by a priest or a spiritual leader who will perform the marriage ceremony later. This ceremony is a very intimate ceremony that is centered around prayer and a ring exchange. This represents each person's promise to stay true to one another for life. Traditionally, this part of the wedding took place before the engagement announcement, but now it's more common for it to happen right before the wedding. Another tradition that is common within Russian culture is the crowning of the bride and groom. This is a more reverent tradition than the previously mentioned exchanging of rings, and there are a few steps to the crowning. So firstly, the priest leads the newlyweds to the altar, where they stand on a fresh, rose-colored cloth to mark the beginning of their union. Both the bride and groom declare in front of witnesses that they are free to marry whomever they want and have made no prior promises to anyone else. The priest will then place crowns on the bride and groom's head after exchanging actinias and saying several long prayers. Members of the wedding party then traditionally hold these above the couple's head during the ceremony. Then the bride and groom will share a common cup of wine while listening to readings from the epistle and gospel. The next tradition that we're going to talk about is breaking glass. This is a very interesting tradition within the Russian culture, and this ritual is symbolistic of a couple's desire for a happy and withstanding marriage. And this represents a new beginning. So the amount of pieces of broken glass is supposed to represent the number of years that they would be together. Thus, this would create the incentive to want to break more glass. And then a few other things that we're going to talk about is something called cleaning the monkey floor, cleaning the monkey from the floor. And that's a tradition in which there is money thrown on the ground. And then this money that's thrown on the ground is it's either genuine or fake. And once the money is thrown onto the ground, the bride rushes to pick it up. And at the end of their blissful celebration, the newly married couple gets to keep what they got. Another interesting tradition is bride napping and ransoms, and that has to be one of the most interesting traditions yet. This tradition is as simple as the name. During the reception, the bride's family will kidnap the bride. Another Russian tradition is called kitchen towel. This is where grooms can expect to demonstrate a commitment to their wives by tying a knot in a dish towel. The ease with which he can untangle a knot will determine how effectively he handles future conflicts within the family. And then we have the bread and salt tradition, and this involves the family's matriarch traditionally brings the newlyweds bread and salt wrapped in an embroidered cloth. The newlyweds will get blessed with good health and happiness because of this. At the end of this wedding ceremony, the bride and groom traditionally share a meal by baking bread, dipping it in salt, and eating it. In Russia, bread is also a symbol of wealth and prosperity. In addition, the bread and salt symbolizes the couple's readiness to settle down in their new home. In this sense, the wedding tradition of presenting bread and salt symbolizes a commitment to preserving and honoring one's family history. And then the last one that we'll talk about today is the karava bread, and this is an ancient Russian tradition that often operates as the main symbol of the union. It is very important to note that this bread must be baked by married or childbearing women. Otherwise, this can be seen as a bad omen for marriage, and this can span over several days. So these are just a few of the traditions that I've learned from the Russian culture.